When you get late night visitors. I was commuting to college at the time and had 3 siblings that also lived at home, my brother and 2 sisters. For some context, we lived on 5 acres in rural Ohio, surrounded on both sides by woods and farm fields. Additionally, during the week, my dad normally left for work at 2 a.m., so I had always felt like it was my job to be the man of the house, because he was gone during the times when you would imagine something sketchy happening. However, on this night, because it was the weekend, my dad was home. I woke up to the sound of my brother's voice trying to get my attention. We had separate rooms upstairs, and coming out of our rooms, you could look down over the banister and to see our front door. When I woke up, it took a few moments to get out of the haze and realize what was going on. I looked at the clock and it was around 2:30 a.m. and my brother told me there were 2 men at our front door. Now this really woke me up. We quietly walk out of my room and peek over to look down at the front door. When we looked, there was no one at the door, but I noticed my parents off to the side, out of view of the glass on the front door. I whispered down to my dad, and he told me there were 2 guys who had been talking to each other and knocking on the door. Hearing my dad say this freaked me out even more. I went back into my room and grabbed my pistol, quickly shuffling down the stairs after looking to make sure they weren't at the door. If they had been, they would have easily seen me coming down the stairs, as it is in direct view of the door. My brother is right behind me as we head over to where my parents are, whispering to try and find out what is going on. My parents had awoken to the sound of our dog barking and had come out to find these 2 men knocking loudly at the door. At this point, the men returned and began knocking again, despite the fact that no one had come to the door and our dog was still actively barking. The fact that they were there at this time in a location where houses are spread out hundreds of yards and still knocking with the dog barking made the situation even more terrifying. After a couple of minutes, the men walked away and we all shuffled across the kitchen into the family room to peek out the windows and into our driveway, which was lit up by our outside light. There was a black Cadillac sitting there, but no one was inside from what we could see. Immediately the question was, where did those guys go? They weren't in their car and they were no longer at the front door. Unfortunately, we figured out the answer when the handles on our back French doors started jiggling. They were actively trying to enter the back of our house, which enters into the kitchen. At this point, I just remember my mom frantically saying, "David," to my dad, as pure terror overwhelmed her. Then 2 things happened. Adrenaline filled my body as I prepared my handgun, horrified at the very real possibility that I might have to shoot these men. Secondly, my dad finally grabbed the phone, called the police, and calmly told them what was happening. Thankfully, after a minute of jiggling, they stopped at the back door and disappeared again, only to return to their knocking at the front. However, at this point, several minutes had gone by, and suddenly we saw the local police fly up in multiple cruisers with their lights on. As they whipped into our driveway and front yard, the 2 men bolted away, attempting to run the long way around the house across the driveway. One of them disappeared out of our view, but the other one was intercepted by an officer yelling for him to get on the ground. He didn't, and he was immediately tased and fell on the ground. Some of the officers went around the house after the other guy, and one of them came to talk to my dad and I as we came out to the front. They ended up finding the other man hiding in my sister's little playhouse in the backyard. It appears both of them were drunk and or high, as the one who hid had cocaine on him. While they both were arrested that night, we never did find out what they were charged with or what happened to them. Mall parking lot creep. I worked at Woodfield Mall in a department store. I usually got out at 9 p.m., but this day has ended up closer to 10 p.m. As I was balancing out my register, I had these intense feeling of dread, like my stomach dropped and I just had a terrible feeling about leaving the building. If you don't know, Woodfield Mall is one of the biggest malls in America and is very busy all the time. I made my way to the employee break room where the their stairwell that led out to the second level parking lot was. That same feeling of dread came over me again. I decided to call my friend and keep him on the phone until I made it to my car. When he answered, I literally said, "I know I'm being stupid, but I'm just nervous to walk to my car alone." As I open the door, all I see is the giant parking lot, nearly empty. My car, which was an extra large SUV, and about 4 spots away from my car are 2 cars, surrounded by a group of about 10 very seedy looking people. I immediately told my friend what I saw, and he just kept talking to me and told me to walk as fast as I can, which had my heart racing because I had to walk right past them to get to my car. I hurriedly walked by and jumped in my car. I let my friend know I was good and panicked for nothing. We disconnected and then I hear a tap on my window. My heart sank as I turned to look at who was tapping on my window. Of course, it was one of the creeps. I rolled my window down about 1/4 of the way. He was somewhat short, so he couldn't reach in through the window if he tried. He asked if I had a lighter. He must have seen me light up a cigarette the second I got in my car. I tell him my lighter is on its last leg and might not light, but I hand it to him. He begins trying to spark it while stopping to ask me all sorts of weird questions. He kept asking me if I wanted to go for a walk. I declined multiple times. At this point, I'm just feeling annoyed until I see him pull out his own lighter and light his cigarette. Now my head was spinning. Maybe he just used the lighter excuse to talk to me, but maybe it was something worse. Some things became a little blurry conversation-wise because my fear took over. But I remember seeing his friends gathering in front of my car, which made me extremely nervous. I told the guy to watch out because I was gonna flick my cigarette out the window. So he backs up and I flick it towards his friends, hoping they might scatter. One guy got mad and started getting loud, so I just apologized and said it was an accident. He walked off with a pissy attitude and his friends followed. Thank God. I tell the guy by my window that I have to go. This guy hears it and hops up right next to my window and says, "Looks like you're gonna run out of gas, Miss Lady. Hope you don't break down on the side of the road." Followed by a small mischievous smile and then says, "Maybe I'll see you around." At this point, I decided I didn't care if I ran his feet over, and I just floored it out of there and could hear them all laughing. I don't know what that was all about, but I was absolutely terrified. Stay aware, friends, and always trust your gut. Man who tried to run me off the road on purpose. I was driving home from house sitting in another city. It takes me about 6 hours to do this drive on my motorcycle because I have to pull over regularly to massage the feeling back into my butt and stretch my legs. I left around 11:30 a.m. and missed a weather alert with thunderstorm warnings along my route. This road takes me through mountain passes with lots of hairpin turns. Normal speed is 80 km/h, and a couple of these turns have posted speeds going as low as 30 km/h. It is hailing and pouring rain, full-on thunderstorm weather. I am doing my best to keep to the speed limit while also being safe. And there's nowhere to pull over and wait it out, and not that many passing lanes. On the last hairpin turn, I slow down to take it at the posted speed. This huge truck, who's been behind me for about 15 minutes, pulls into the oncoming lane illegally and speeds up next to me, laying on the horn. It's a blind corner. He sees oncoming traffic coming at him. Instead of doing the smart thing and slowing down to get back behind me, he decides to gun it. If I hadn't downshifted when I realized what he was going to do, he would have nailed me with the 30 trailer he was dragging behind him, sending me flying off the cliff next to us. The next town is about 20 minutes away. I pulled into a gas station to dry out a little and calm down after what had just happened. I watched him just drive away. About 2 hours later, I pulled into a fruit stand to grab a snack and take a break. This is now 3 towns further down the highway. Lo and behold, he sees my motorcycle and pulls in to have a go at me, yells at me, and he had to teach me a lesson for slowing down on the highway. When I asked him what he would have done if he killed me, he told me it would have been my own fault, and he would have laughed as I went over the cliff.